Day 6. Super happy to be here. I'm Miranda Clendenning. I'm Director of Operations and Development for the Empowerment Institute's Center for Reinventing the Planet. We run many initiatives, but one of them is called Cool City Challenge, and it is an initiative to help cities go carbon neutral by 2030, a very audacious moonshot goal, but we are working as hard as we can to do it. 3 different cities were issued a $1 million prize this last year to start into action for creating their city to be carbon neutral. David Gershon has been a social innovator for 40 years with Empowerment Institute and was researching the Green Living Solutions program and Cool Block program over the last 12 years, figuring out how to help people at a household level reduce their carbon footprint and combine into blocks, teams and groups of people that actually work on these actions together to reduce their carbon footprint. I have a video that I'm going to start playing that David gives a presentation of this amazing initiative and what's going on and how you can join. And then he'll be on with us in about 20 minutes and can answer questions, talk to anyone, meet everyone. So glad that you're all here. Can you all see the screen?
So welcome everybody. If you can go on video, it'd be great to see you and feel a sense of community here and know who I'm speaking to. That would be great. Thank you. And thank you for coming, some friends, some new people. Looking forward to sharing our adventure with you all today. I'm very excited that for the first time, we're going to have our cool cities with us, which we will hear from a little later as I tell the story of the Cool City Challenge. Siyama, welcome. Good to see your face again, your bright face.
I
do. Here's how it will work. I'll share the Cool City Challenge story and our strategy for scaling. And then I'll have some time for Q&A. We are also having this on Facebook Live. So Miranda, you'll share any questions that are coming in through Facebook Live when I invite people to share. And then we'll have time to hear from our panelists who will share briefly about what's going on, all the wonderful things going on in their cities, their cool cities. And then we will, then I'll ask them some questions about some of how they experience what they're doing and their visions for the future. So there we have it. Let me begin by putting some slides up so we can see the story here unfold. I assume you can all see the slides? Yes? Okay. Well, anyway, another thing I want to say is Happy Earth Day. It's a day when we celebrate the beauty of the earth. We rededicate ourselves to the earth for those who are on that path. We draw inspiration from all the people around the world doing beautiful things to make our earth and our world a better place. So happy to celebrate Earth Day with you. So with that said, let me share a little bit about what we have in mind to help make the earth a better place to live and create the future that we wish, and really see if we can move the dial around climate change action. So we call it the Cool City Challenge, empowering cities to become carbon neutral by 2030. And we call this a climate moonshot scaling strategy. Our institute, Empowerment Institute, is driving this. So let me tell you the strategy.
And David, can you push the slideshow version on the side?
I can, except that it often doesn't flow very well. I know this is not as ideal. I mean, I could try again, but it sometimes breaks down. Oh, let me try. See if I can get it to work better this time.
And then just use your arrows to push through the.
Yeah, unfortunately on Zoom, it doesn't work as well. That's why I've done it, but I'll try. We'll give it another.
Okay. It looks much better.
I know. Thank you for that, Miranda. Miranda is our director of operations. She makes everything work beautifully. So hopefully this will work better for you and me. So now I just have to, there we go. But we're already a little off. Okay, try it again. Okay, so how do we see the climate challenge? Essentially, what we see is the climate challenge is about time. We know we have a problem, Houston, with our climate. But the bigger problem is how do we get the kind of change we need in the time frame that we need to get that change before hitting irreversible ecological tipping points. So this is about speed of change and magnitude of change. So the obvious question is, where can we get the most carbon reduction in the shortest period of time? And when you look around, what you see is here I am again with the Zoom thing, so bear with me. Cities are a natural focal point because they generate 70% of our carbon emissions. And with currently available solutions, we can become carbon neutral. So it is the natural place to start. And what we also find is Miranda, I'm going to go off of this because it is causing a lot of trouble and it's going to create more trouble than it's worth. So I'm going to get out of this view. So bear with me. And I'm going to put it back in this view. Not as pretty, but it works better on Zoom. So a lesser known fact, citizens are the natural starting point within cities because we represent 70% of the city's emissions and we can mobilize an entire community. So city and citizens are where we can get the kind of traction that we're going to need in the time frame that we need it. So what solutions can create carbon neutral cities without offsets in 10 years? So what we did is we did an analysis of the different types of carbon solutions there are, carbon reduction solutions. And what we found is that there was a set of top-down solutions. People know about them. They often don't think of them as a set of solutions. And they really boil down to three: creating policy, so command and control, new technologies that get introduced into a community, and building new markets for solar or EVs or whatever. Those are the traditional top-down solutions, and they have been effective, but they are not achieving the kind of results in the time frame that we need. And then we have a set of bottom-up solutions, primarily built around what we call behavioral change solutions, which are the bottom-up opportunities where you and I, through how we live our lifestyles, have impact. That is the current state of play on how we are going to get significant carbon reductions. An interesting opportunity lies in that insight. What if we could combine top-down, first of all, integrate all the top-down and the bottom-up, so that we could begin to create what we call a whole system solution. And then once we do that, we discover something quite profound, is that behavioral change, the bottom-up, you and me and how we live our lives, can activate the whole system. Why? Because we are the drivers of policy. We elect our local officials. We are the users of technology. And we are the beneficiaries of new markets that are created to enable us to take advantage of these kinds of opportunities. So what that does, it puts us literally in the driver's seat for how we affect climate change. Instead of being sort of on the sidelines as a passenger watching this thing happen, someone else is in control, and you can name whoever the problem person is or problem institution is. We realize we have immense power if we can figure out how to fully activate that whole system. So If in fact our lifestyles are the place and our advocacy where we get the biggest opportunity for change, how do we empower citizenry in a community to change their behavior? So enter the Cool Block program. So before we get into the Cool Block program, let me talk a little bit about our definition of empowerment that our Empowerment Institute works from. Very simply, it's about enabling people to envision and create what they want in their lives and their world. So it's very much based on vision and providing the tools to enable that. We've been at this now for 40 years. Our expertise is behavioral and social change. We work with millions of people across hundreds of cities, and that's the expertise we're bringing to this adventure. So what is the Cool Block program? An individual steps forward, a block leader. They knock on their neighbors' doors, or if they are a single family household block, or they knock on their neighbors' apartment doors if they're in a multifamily dwelling, and they gather 5 to 8 households. They meet 9 times over 4.5 months, and they go through 5 topics: disaster resilience, carbon reduction, water stewardship, neighbor livability, and empowering others. This program grows out of 30 years of research with predecessor programs that were built around each of those topics. So that's the program. What does it look like and how does it change behavior? So there's 120 action recipes as opposed to checklists, which tell you specifically step-by-step how to take an action. There's a peer support system of your neighbors that reinforce what you try to do. So you have peer pressure and peer support to follow through and to do what you want to do. There's self-directed meeting guides that enable a team to run this on their own. There's a volunteer coach who helps the teams stay on track. There's a mobile web platform where people take the actions and enter in their results. And then we integrate in local resources that help you take the actions, so it gets customized and localized. Why do people join? So that's the what. Now, why do people take the time to do this? And there are 3 reasons. The first is that people are seeking meaning in their lives. So this is all about values. It's not about financial incentives or disincentives. They want to create a better world for their children. When we would interview people ending their experience, they would always say, I want to make a better world for my kids. That was almost always, or my grandkids or my nephews or whoever. The second thing is they're seeking to know their neighbors. One of our secret sauces is that people want to get to know their neighbors and they don't know how to get to know their neighbors. So they're seeking community. And the third thing is they're wanting to make a difference. They're seeking agency. I want to be able to have an impact in my life, in my world. Those are the why. That's why people do this. After many years of research, we've sort of boiled this thing down and we found that's why people do this. So what kind of results have we gotten in our pilot so far? Now, we are now in the new phase of our work where we are getting ready to work in, well, we've already begun working in 3 new cities, but up until that moment, these are the results we had in our pilots. We worked in 5 cities: Palo Alto, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Mountain View, and Isla Vista. We were focusing on California because it's an early adopter city, and that's where we were starting our scaling work. We worked on 125 cool blocks. About 2,000 people participated. On average, they reduced their carbon footprint by 29%. They took on average 25 distinct actions. And the neighbor-to-neighbor process that I talked about earlier, where they knock on their neighbor's door, invite them to their home to hear about this program, lead an information meeting, we're getting a 45% recruitment rate across those 3 cities based on those 3 selling points. So we're very happy with the results we've achieved. We realize we have a winning proposition. That doesn't change the game around climate by itself, but it gets us a start. It gets us a beginning. So let's come back to the big question. So can we really change fast enough to create carbon neutral cities by 2030? That is the big question. And so enter the science of tipping points. Part of my work in social change over the years is a study of where you have levers for change. And tipping points is about leverage. And there are 3 types of tipping points that we work with. I'll go through each of them. The first is diffusion of innovation, and we talk about cyclogenesis and punctuated equilibrium, big words. Let me make them seem a little less daunting sounding. A man named Everett Rogers out of Stanford University studied 1,500 case studies on how new ideas and new technologies diffused. He called that the diffusion of innovation. And what he found was that 15% of the people, 15% of people, in order to get to the place you need to get to, 15% of the people is the tipping point. That's how you can begin to get the larger shift in what you're trying to achieve. And it starts with these early adopters who have a predisposition to seek out the new and have a high tolerance for experimentation. Not all social innovations are able to make it through this chasm. They have to have a lot of things going for them. But if they can, it starts diffusing on its own momentum to the early majority, who are the belongers. The late majority come along eventually because of social pressure, and then the laggards are the last group, and they don't usually participate. So diffusion of innovation is how we are designing our strategies in every way, shape, and form: early adopter cities, early adopter blocks, early adopter households, and so on. The second is what we call cyclogenesis, which grows out of the study of hurricanes, how hurricanes and energy patterns form in the natural world. And they form out of these small vortices or small eddies of energy. They don't form fully. You don't see a hurricane form fully. It starts with these small eddies of energy. And then they become smaller vortices, and they begin to combine and expand into a hurricane. And so think of each of these little vortices as cool blocks, and then cool neighborhoods, and then cool cities. And you begin to see the power of this kind of process of engaging from the small or very early place of change, the early adopter block, the early adopter neighborhood, and so on. So that's how this process is designed to spread. More to be said on that. And the third is what's called punctuated equilibrium. This grows out of the study of evolutionary biology, which is about how evolution takes place over long periods of time. So over long periods of time, there are stable systems. And these systems can be happening for decades or centuries or millennia, depending upon what we're talking about. But at a certain moment in time, there is the potential for a punctuation of equilibrium, and a radical shift can take place. And what enables that in evolutionary biology is what's called an extinction level threat. So 800 million years ago, there was the Cambrian revolution that came out of the fact that there was too much oxygen in the air, and single cell organisms had to combine into multicellular organisms, not unlike what we have to do today around carbon. And so they did, and they started a whole new set of multicellular organisms and began a whole new evolution in the species. So we have to do something similar because we're facing an extinction level threat. And what is it that we have to activate? We have to activate our creativity, our intelligence, our will to be able to respond at the speed and magnitude of change needed. What we are proposing and trying to do and are doing is speeding up time by 3x. We're trying to get to 2030, what the UN says we need to get to by 2050. And they now realize that date is still quite long from where we need to, quite far into the future from what is real. That's what they thought was politically acceptable when they made that goal. But 2030 is in fact what science is telling us we actually have to achieve. This is part of how we do that. And we're watching this happen. We're watching it happen in the last year or two around climate change has tipped. And we are recognizing that that equilibrium has been punctured and we are now moving to another stable state. We're in that middle where all the action is, all those up and down lines. So can we do this? Can we do this? The question is unknown. We've seen a few examples in fighting wars, putting a person on the moon. We believe we can do this. We have designed a strategy to do this. Let me share more about that strategy. So how does Cool Blocks help cities become carbon neutral by 2030? So see those little people in red, those are the Cool Block leaders. And what you're going to see is the evolution of a Cool Block into a cool city and beyond. So as you start to activate these block leaders, you're building leadership capacity, and specifically what we call climate action capacity. These block leaders are multi-dimensional threats, if you will. They can do a lot of things. They can activate their block, they can move to a neighborhood, they can activate their city council. So this leadership capacity in climate action is significant. It's not just that we're building cool blocks. And you'll start to see this meter start to turn to the right as we build more capacity, which is what the whole cool block part of our strategy is about. And then we move to a cool neighbor, which is approximately 10 cool blocks. And now we can do things we can't do at a block level. Now we can do microgrids. Now we can build sort of, neighborhood level transportation systems. We can do community agriculture. We can do a whole sort of thing, a whole series of things that we couldn't do at the block level. We have different kinds of benefits of scale. Then we move to approximately 10 cool neighborhoods, which are what we call cool districts. And now we can do things where we are way more capable than we could if we were just a block. And now we can build new economic models. We can start to figure out how we build, significant resiliency, because every level below it is organized. So we have very coherent blocks and neighborhoods now organized in a district. So you can see a scaling model that has a lot of potential for profound transformation, all from the bottom up, where the power is in the system. And then we move to a cool city. And a cool city, we define as a minimum of 400 cool blocks. And why 400 cool blocks? Well, that's approximately 10,000 people. It's a vanguard. It's a tipping point. When you have 10,000 people in a community on board in this way, knowledgeable, skillful, committed, carbon literate, you have power. You have power to change things. Way less than that. We've seen in some of our cities, 10, 15 can shift a city council rather quickly, not to mention build demand for new technologies. And you keep going, you have a cool region. So now we're talking Orange County, Los Angeles County, Sonoma County, three of the counties we're working in, or the Bay Area, or Southern California, but we're now talking region. So now you have multiple cool cities. And then you move to a cool state. And that's why we've honed in on California, because California is so advanced and we're looking to have a cool California phenomenon. We're already in partnership with the state of California. So that's the vision. And you keep seeing this evolution of leadership at each level of scale. So let's look at how this works on the ground. And let's look at transit, which is the biggest contributor to a city's carbon footprint. And let me show you how top down and bottom up fit together. So household choices start the transformation. So demand side drives supply side, as is the way of economics and the way of change. So people tonight, after they go through cool block, they're walking more, they're biking more, they're sharing rides, they're switching to EVs and e-bikes, they're using public transit. That's how they're getting 29% carbon footprint reduction, among other things. That's creating demand for new policies. Now there's new demand for sidewalks or car-free zones or bike lanes or charging stations or incentives for EVs or new transit options. There's now potential demand for a very serious commitment to transit in cities, for example. which usually does not have a lot of demand and a lot of budget and a lot of commitment, because there's often a concern there won't be a market and we'll put all this money together and we won't be able to produce an outcome, which in turn creates more top-down investments as people drive and as people now are participating more and changing their behaviors, and this virtuous cycle begins, and it goes on. Less parking required, spaces freed up for housing, public spaces, parks. Some of the California housing crisis starts to get reduced because we're now not needing as much space for some of these things that we've had to spend time on, spend resources on before. For example, all the road infrastructure costs and all the road expenditures. We have higher density and walkability. People are healthier. And then it moves into what we call a whole system phenomenon, where when you start to transform one system, you start to recognize that they impact all the other systems. In fact, they're all connected. It's a community that needs to connect with all these issues. We're now dealing with buildings and land use and wellness and resilience and so on, jobs and economy. So once you start to connect the dots, you start to recognize the power of what can happen when a whole system is activated. And it starts from the bottom, and it can start with any part of the system. Transit happens to be a very high leverage version of it. So now let's look at how we translate that into a carbon neutral city. So what we have is a need to, once again, work with the fractal of whole system design. So we have to bring together five distinct components to get to this carbon neutral city. We need to figure out how to integrate the technology, the top-down change from that. We need to figure out how it's going to be paid for. We need to figure out what the policies are. We need to figure out how community engagement works. We need to figure out how all these systems work together. And then we need to get a synergy effect so that these aren't siloed. So this is a key piece of how we're organizing what we call our Moonshot Climate Action Plan strategies, which is the top-down process that will be taking advantage of the bottom-up demand we're building through Cool Block. Another thing that's happening while this is occurring is that we are also working on the affective side of things. So we're building greater trust. There's greater community cohesion. We're building what we call second order change leadership capacity. Second order change is part of this whole model of social change 2.0 that I work with and we work with, which is transformative social change. We're building that capacity literally block by block. And all that's needed to achieve a carbon neutral city. And we've built in, from an empowerment point of view, all of these key ingredients. So when you understand the nature of empowerment, what empowers someone to change, it starts with a compelling vision. The more compelling, the better. A carbon neutral city by 2030 is a compelling vision. Getting to know your neighbors is a compelling vision. Getting to feel a sense of being a leader in the world around an issue that matters for human survival is a compelling vision. Then we have innovation driven by necessity. An extinction level threat is demanding innovation. We have to innovate, or else we don't keep the planet, or we don't have a very high quality of life if we do keep it. And then we have an idea whose time has come. And there are two ideas that I think whose time has come that we are talking about here. The first idea is a carbon neutral city by 2030. We've been talking about that. A second idea whose time has come is believing in ourselves as a human species, that we actually have the power to change, and feeling hopeful as opposed to despairing about our future. That's an idea whose time has come, and we are trying to activate both of those. And the last is a catalyst from the bottom. If you can create capacity for individuals through how they live and through how they advocate to be able to have the kind of impact that this model is aspiring to, you have profound power to actually enable people to engage. So those are the empowerment ingredients. And then we have what we call our moonshot beliefs. Why do we call it why do we call this a climate moonshot strategy? Because this is not something anyone's ever done. No one even thinks it's possible. So this is a moonshot by every definition of the term. And what do you need for a moonshot? You need audacity. This is a bold goal, the boldest goal on the planet, carbon neutral, not even just carbon neutral by 2030, without offsets. That means we don't have any escape mechanism when we'll just, okay, we'll get as far as we can, they'll pay for the rest just by offsetting. This is asking us to go all the way, which means we have to really think it very creatively. And we have to think also very abundantly. This may cost a lot of money. Where are we going to find the resources? So we need an abundance mindset. We need an abundance of resources. We have to figure out how to get way out of the box. Most cities don't think at that level, which is why this is a multi-sector team. It's not just city governments. It's a public-private civic sector collaboration. So they can start to think more abundantly about where things like money and other kinds of resource talent can come from. Then you have the agency, empowering people to believe in themselves, empowering blocks to see a possibility they've never seen before and feel a sense of agency, empowering the community to believe in itself and see possibilities it hasn't seen, activating the whole of a community. And then the alchemy, which is when all this kind of whole system thinking comes together. Those are our moonshot beliefs that are embedded in this. We selected California to lead the way because of these different factors. There's an urgency. There's no place on the planet that is experiencing more climate disruptions than California. There's a deeply rooted environmental ethos. We celebrate what happened in Santa Barbara in 1969, which is where the modern Earth Day began and where the modern environmental movement began in California. There's immense political will, Gavin Newsom, the whole legislature, cities. There's a number of cities committed to carbon neutrality. These 3 cities are leading the charge, but there are other cities that are also on that path. And since we've begun, there have been a number of new cities that have become committed to carbon neutrality. There's funding from the state to invest. There's a lot of know-how, policy and innovation-wise, and the state itself has set a carbon neutrality goal of 2035. So it is leading the charge for any large, should we say, political jurisdiction. So what does the scaling mechanism look like across California and beyond? So now we're getting into the Cool City Challenge. So in June of last year, 40 cities across California went through a rigorous, many months long application process. One of the people who you'll hear from in a little while, named Linda Fisher from Petaluma, participated in that from day one, from actually before day one, and as did the other cities soon thereafter. The winning cities were Los Angeles, Irvine, and Petaluma. So very large city, 4 million. A medium-sized city, 3.3, I think 300 and something thousand, and Petaluma about 60,000. So different size cities, so we can learn different things. They each won $1 million from our Empower Institute, plus our consulting support. They had to form multi-sector teams, as I said earlier, public, private, and civic sector. Some of those Moonshot team members are actually on this call. You'll hear from 2 of them. And they had a pretty high bar to get over. They had to recruit 200 Cool Block leaders before they were even awarded any funding. And they had to recruit 25 community partner organizations. This is not a walk in the park. This is serious commitment to be able to even apply. Well, they can apply, but to win, that's what they had to accomplish. And they had to have a city council resolution to become carbon neutral by 2030 without offsets. One of the cities had already done that, but the other 2 cities actually had to do that and did that as a way of actually applying. Amazing. We're going to launch phase 2. Our plan is the fall. Right now, we're in a steep learning curve. There's an immense amount of learning to do. So we're not feeling we have to rush get to the next round of cities, but we will be planning the next round in the fall. We'll be awarding $1 million up to 25 California cities, 25 across America, plus our consulting, to be determined how many cities will actually make the cut, but that's what we are setting up as our capacity for the next round. That could shift a little bit, but right now that's our thinking. We're going to be creating what we call a Cool City Challenge Innovation Fund to support moonshot breakthrough ideas in the city. So as they're building their moonshot climate action plans, we want to start investing to help grow the most powerful innovation ideas. And then we will be testing it across the 3 cities. So that's our innovation fund. We have pledging of money for these 2 things right now. And then phases 3 and 4 will be to launch 100 more cities in 2023 and 100 more cities in 2024, in approximately that spread, 25 in California, 75 in America, 100 worldwide. So that'll get us 250 cool cities across the planet. And each of those cities will be serving as what we call teaching cities to diffuse this climate moonshot knowledge and experience to 10 more cities. Some of those cities have already, some of our cool cities have already begun reaching out to neighboring cities. That'll bring 2,500 cities on board worldwide, which is 25% of the cities over 50,000 people. So it's a tipping point in its own right. So here's what it looks like to save the planet, if you will. Carbon neutral California cities by 2030, carbon neutral America cities and planet cities by 2030, carbon neutral California by 2035, led through the process of these carbon neutral cities, and a carbon neutral planet by 2040, not 2050. And 2050 wasn't a carbon neutral planet at all anyway. It was just a set of goals. So we have a very aggressive, a very audacious vision of what we want to achieve. So let me end with a quote from Rilke, a poet who is got activism roots in his being. Again and again in history, some people wake up. They have no ground in the crowd, and they move to broader, deeper laws. They carry strange customs with them and demand room for bold and audacious action. The future speaks ruthlessly through them. They change the world. So those that want to learn more about our work, you can go to coolcity.earth and you can learn more, and you'll see a variety of different resources there also if you're interested in applying or just learning more about what we're doing. So with that said, let me see if there are any questions.
Hi,
What a
David.
beautiful seamless transition. That was one of the best I've seen on Zoom yet. Look at that. That
We
was
do this a
great.
lot.
Everyone.
Oh my God, David. What a joy to be able to get that kind of good news. That someone's figured out how we're going to save the planet and is doing it and bringing it into shape and form. Deep bows to you and Miranda and the whole team. That is such a great message at this time.
Bless you, John. Thank you for hosting this and for all the good work that you guys do, and welcome everyone. If you have any questions or comments, we have about 15 minutes for anyone who may wish to learn more about what we're doing or figure out how that might apply to where you live or to your life in general. Feel free to ask questions.
Well, before you got here, I don't know if Janice is still here. I just see her picture right now, but Janice Hall was talking a lot about how she knows many, many people in Boulder and many people in Princeton, Pennsylvania, and wants to make sure that we get connected to mayors and lots of people in those places. I told her some about what we have going on in Boulder, Colorado already, and them wanting to be one of our next cities when we launch into the next round. And they're already doing a cool neighborhood challenge, but I don't know if Janice is still here and wanted to say hi, but she had a lot she wants to connect around after this is over. So we'll connect after that too.
You know, if she's not here, David, the thing I'd love to hear from you is what is missing now? What do you guys need in order to achieve what's the growing edge, as you would say, and how can we help in at least starting by becoming aware of what you need? What's missing?
Thanks, John. We are in a steep learning curve. How you mobilize an entire city to not just show up, but actually change their behavior. How you mobilize the businesses in the community, how you mobilize local government. So we set a high bar. It is literally a moonshot. I would start with prayers and good intentions. This is hard to do well. What do we need beyond that? We need other cities willing to show up at this level. This is asking a lot. It's asking more than has ever been asked of any community that I've ever seen. It's not like they're just making commitments. They're actually having to change. And cities are not used to that kind of change. They're used to, simple things to do, like fill potholes or, make resolutions, but actually changing an entire population and engaging them in such a dynamic way. So, I think that's, hard work. But the thing is about the vision is that from an empowerment point of view, what gets people to want to engage is a compelling vision. As I mentioned, the more powerful the vision, the more people engage. And this is a powerful vision. People are going to increase their quality of life on their blocks. We're moving into the phase we call cool neighborhoods, where you get 10 cool blocks together. And they're creating carbon neutral neighborhoods, regenerative neighborhoods, resilient neighborhoods. Given the chaos in the world, who would not want to live in a neighborhood like that if they could? So we have a lot of work to do to help people see the possibility, but I think the power of the vision is pulling people. So far, so good. We have over 300 cool block leaders that have signed up in Petaluma. We needed 200. LA is very, very deeply engaged. They're getting ready to create something called Retrofit LA. This is a resolution where they'll be retrofitting all the buildings. They're trying to get a lot of money raised to do that. They're working closely with us. It goes on. Right. But I would say the next thing would be if you or your city have an interest, let us know and we can put you on the list for the next round, which will likely be starting in January or so of next year. So, short answer, John.
But where there's a leverage point here, I don't know if you're aware of this and if you guys already made this connection, but there's a convergence room here during this convergence we're doing for World Unity Week by the Rotarians, the Rotary.
Oh, nice.
And that's a perfect, I think, at least, and we've combined city programs. So we brought the International Cities of Peace, the Compassionate Cities, Integral Cities, but that's a group that I think if you don't have a door into, we'd love to.
I'd love to connect with the Rotary Club.
Yeah, Rotaries are natural. They took on like malaria and, they know. So it's interesting.
We could use a strategic partner like that. That would help the cause because they could anchor it in these cities and it's a service project and they're so embedded in the community. So yes, if you want to make the connection.
All right. David Wick, that's the guy I'm going to introduce you. Put you on Weaver, connect you up.
Okay.
Who else?
Any other questions or comments from anyone else? Not that you need to have any. We can have a dialogue on our own, but if you have any, feel free. We have about another 10 minutes or so.
I'm going to answer the question in the chat.
Yeah, Anja, I don't know if I'm saying that right. Anja Mays, if you can speak, really good thing brought up over in the comments. Are you?
Yeah, I'm interested. Thank you for this stage. I'm interested in if you could do it like a model project. Could you do it out of the blue and think about one of those cities to build up new and let it be like that, not existing cities, just build a new one. So how would you do it when you would have a place to do it in the Arctic? Somewhere there.
Okay, question. Well, it gets a lot easier when you have a new city because you can start from scratch. You have to invent a city, of course, but a cool city is a good starting point. That's a longer conversation because you actually have to build infrastructure. And I think most new construction, not to mention quote unquote new cities, tend to start from being very green already. because it's just more intelligent and smarter. The harder part is retrofitting existing cities. But I would say if this is of interest, now you're located where exactly?
Yeah, I'm located in Germany. I'm speaking from Germany, but I'm speaking for a Greenlandic shaman that is located here.
I'm not hearing you very well. Could you
in
maybe
Greenland.
speak in where?
Greenland.
Greenland.
So, and I'm just thinking out of the blue in creating.
Well, you know, here's just a simple idea. The easiest way in is that if you know a group of people who live in, you know, who have homes, is to start with a cool block, because a cool block gets you grounded in this process. And then people understand what this is. And then if it is a group of people that live in proximity to one another, where you might have potential for more than one cool block, build a cool neighborhood. Because a cool neighborhood is a starting point, and you can anchor it much smaller than having to build an entire city. I know that you're thinking hypothetically, or maybe you're not, I don't know. But that would be a starting point for anyone. That's what we did, for example, in Boulder. We started with a cool block, and then it turned into a cool neighborhood. I know Miranda's doing some of that in Crestone, and there are other places that are not fully in the cool city, shall we say, orbit, but are wanting to get there eventually. That's a great way to start. You can just go to coolblock.org to learn more about that, or coolcity.earth.
Yeah, and it's so fun. One of the things that I love to say is that in some ways we talk about how big and audacious this goal is, and it almost sounds like work, but my family and my block doing it is actually so fun. And we're actually in our third year of doing it, each time increasing what we're able to do, getting our house on solar and all kinds of different things. So I just want to say that my kids love it, youth love it. It is one of the most inspirational ways to create change in your own life and help the kids to have hope and reduce anxiety. So I hope everyone here does actually go to the Cool Block website and picks up doing this on their own. Anyone can do it right now, even if you're not ready to onboard your whole city yet. We do have a few more questions.
I want to just piggyback on that one thing, though, for a moment. It would seem to me right now we have a surfeit of despair on the planet about our future. And one of the ways that gets transformed is by being part of the solution, as opposed to just being part of the frustration and the fear that is pervasive on the planet. So doing a cool block is one of the most powerful ways to transform that energy, because now you're part of the solution and you're also engaging your energy in a very constructive way. So as a minimum, I invite everyone to just do a cool block. It'll be profound for your block, but it'll also have ripples out into the planet as more and more people say, yes, I'm part of the solution, as opposed to just either frustrated or angry or in fear. Anyway, there may be other questions. I see
I'll ask the one for Emily in a minute, because she can't, but is Lynn here? Did Lynn want to bring up what you were bringing up in the chat? Let me see if she's still. Lynn?
Remind me, was that about, I just mentioned when you said California was the most impacted on the planet, I thought there was a lot of places, and it was like it's a contest you don't want to win, right? But so it was just that. Is that what you're thinking, Miranda?
Yeah, that was your comment. And I don't think that's exactly what David was saying. So I wanted him to address that.
I didn't say it was the most impacted. I mean, but they are certainly leading the charge, unfortunately, with droughts and fires and mudslides and you name it.
Yeah.
But yes, there's a lot of places that are having impacts. But the main point is when you have an opportunity like that, the great thing is, what do you do with it? How do you leverage it where you have that consciousness? I know, for example, in the Bay Area, there was a day last year where there was no sun anymore. It was just orange, and everyone thought the apocalypse had occurred. Now, when you have 20 million people having that experience, there's an opportunity there. So it's a high leverage opportunity. And the key thing now is, where do you get the most ROI on your time and investment in your resources? So you want to go to the places that are most awake and ready to change and have the most conditions favorable to that change.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. Maybe if I can sneak in a little question. Do you see any interface with, say, professional city planners and things? Are they open to this? It seems like they're also talking about some of this. And do you see any partnerships that might develop with?
City planners are natural allies if they are progressive. Many times city planners tend to just do the basics. Most climate action plans end up in the city planning department, but they don't often have a lot of leverage because they don't have political influence. So city planners are an important piece of the puzzle. It tends to work more easily when you have political leadership, a mayor and or city council leading the charge, and then empowering the city planners with, the mandate of what to do. And then they still have to figure out what to do, which is easier said than done, because city planning is very different than creating moonshot climate action plans. They're almost different universes, but nonetheless, they are an important piece of the puzzle for sure.
Okay, and thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I'll bring up one from Emily in just a second, but Anne Mary was also bringing up knowing neighborhoods in India and asking about what do we do about where language varies and how do people join that? So do you want to address how we're doing that?
So India or just languages? I mean, there's in many, let's say, cities that we work in, particularly, let's say, LA, there are many different languages. So language is always an issue. We have different strategies to address languages. The platform, for example, is able to be translated by Google Translator into different languages. So that helps on the fundamentals. And then we often will have individuals who are children of people that don't speak English, which is the dominant language we work with, come and help with parents who may not have that as their first language. So there's different ways to do workarounds with language. We've had that experience enough, so we tend to be able to get that to work if people really want to engage. India is a very different question. How do we bring this to India? That we don't have an immediate plan. I'm not sure Cool Block is the most perfect solution for Indian cities. There's a lot of other issues that tend to be higher priority. We have another program, we call it Imagine, and even our Peace on Earth game, which is built on these same principles. John knows that game well, having played it, and one of the leaders. Those things would work better in India. So if you want to see this model translated in a different context, reach out to us and we can give you more information on that. By the way, John, for your information, we are now modeling the Pozone idea in 4 communities across Africa. So it's going well. We've integrated the Imagine model with the Peace on Earth game.
Oh, I love that.
And it's now in South Africa, Ghana, Kenya, and Morocco. And we'll be doing something on Peace Day, so we should connect.
I'd love to. In fact, we have this framework, this 99 Days of Peace Through Unity, to actually scaffold the next generation of cooperation and collaboration. And practically speaking, what you're talking about and what you're doing with Cool Block and the Pose Zones there, the idea was that you act locally, but then you can scale your things regionally, like right around you, whether your block becomes a neighborhood. And then we can synchronize these things globally now through the network that we have.
Yes.
So that we're becoming aware of best practices and able to move those practices easily to all the spots on the earth. But they always start local action, somebody somewhere, and then they scale in their region, and then they can sync up simultaneously.
Well, that's exactly the model we're testing out with the Pose Zones. So in order to, and we gave out small grants, in order to have won a small grant, you actually had to have a community buy-in, at least I think it's 50,000 people. And then they had to get commitment from different leadership. And they've integrated it with their development plans. So it's now a vehicle through which relationships can happen in new ways to produce tangible outcomes. So peace towards a specific developmental outcome in these countries. So it's being received as a new tool in that toolkit.
Very good to hear.
Peace as the byproduct, if you will.
Yeah. No, I'm excited to get more caught up to, because this idea of inventing these kind of games that the community can embrace and people can bring about change that actually lead to change. I appreciate how hard that is. What keeps these things persisting, and how does this undesirable situation where we're all not paying attention, especially now, David? I mean, I think this is our rudest awakening. Like this moment, this number of breakdowns simultaneously is something I've never experienced before.
Yeah.
And you being who you are, what I loved what you said before. Best way to cope with the despair it could give you is to get involved and be a part of making things better. And
I mean, the operative opportunity here is that in a deconstruction moment that humanity is going through, which is required to reconstruct and build the new, we have to have the new ready. So as the old starts to break down, people are ready now because they have nothing to hold on to for the new. And that's what our whole reinventing the planet strategy is, and our work in our climate space and peace space and development space is.
it's such important work. My gosh, we need to amplify what you're learning so we can learn from you. You're one of the most
My
important.
pleasure, John.
No,
Happy
really,
to
I'm not
be
saying that to
with
flatter
this.
you. We need it, okay? I'm not saying it to make you feel good. We
I
need it
understand.
for our own sanity and lives
Yes,
here.
I appreciate that, John, and I do receive it, and am thankful for your kind words as well.
Yeah.
And let's have a meeting after this about how we weave this into the 99 days. And I know Peace
Right.
Week this year is also Climate Week with a very big focus on both.
yep,
So
yep.
let's figure out how to weave these stories and get this out to as many people as possible. My family is doing the Peace Game and the Cool Block, and my neighborhood and community is as well, because we think both are so important, and it's fun and it's doable to do both of them, and it involves whole systems change. So you watch everything change around you as you do these programs. The one other question was, how do we deal with people who have conflicts of interest in this program? So
Well, we've had a lot of those experiences where we've had people on cool blocks who had ideologically quite diverse points of view. You know, the traditional red-blue split in America. When you are actually trying to make your block a better place to live, increase your quality of life, build community, it transcends ideology. It's a well-known phenomenon. When you get down to the specifics, there's no room for ideological difference. That's why cities are such an interesting place to do work, because the ideologies tend to become less fracturing. So yeah, I mean, this is one of its gifts, is that it can get people who see the world differently connected, not just politically, but, you know, spiritual perspectives, ethnicity, racial, you know, all the things that separate us, which are silly usually, almost always silly, but they don't need to separate us if we find common ground.
Cool.
I think we're at the top of the hour. So
We have a hard stop, John, or?
No, I think we're okay. The thing is, the live stream they've been out on, that's where this exposure is going to get. I think we may have to, let me check. Keep talking and I'm going to look and see if we can keep this
Any
going.
other questions or comments?
that was all of them that I see, unless anyone wants to raise their hand or say anything.
Yeah, I mean,
else.
we may be done naturally.
Okay, so hold on. Let's bring the stream into a close.